ZBTR TV presents Conversations with Muhambi.
Empowering the future, strengthening democracy, and building a vibrant civic culture among Zambia's youth.
Tune in every third Saturday of the month as I host young, vibrant Zambian guests discussing matters of national interest. Good morning and welcome to Conversations with Muhambi, where Zambia's young voices share ideas that shape our nation's future. I'm your host, Kembia Munsanje.
Good morning, everyone. This is Zambia Blog Talk Radio's ZBTR TV's monthly special with me, Kembia Munsanje, Conversations with Muhambi. We're very excited to be doing something a little different today. We're going to talking about finance, and so we have under the tagline Capital Conversations. We'll be talking about finance, how to accrue capital, why it's important for young people to build finance. And I'm very happy to have a young professional, Mr. Kembia Munsanje, who is going to be our guest today. And he's going to be talking with us for the next hour, all things capital. Kembia, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you doing, Mommy?
It's good to see you. First of all, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on the show. And obviously, we got to give a special shout out to your dad. So I know he's probably watching. So I want to thank Dr. Elliot Munsanje for this opportunity, for availing your son to us. And so we're very grateful. First of all, I just want to say, I think I feel severely underdressed. I didn't say that to you while we were preparing, but I like a guy who's in a suit on a Saturday. So for that, I'll give you props.
No worries.
But just sort of before we get into our questions, just tell, our audience, who you are, your story, and sort of what led you to pursuing this career that you are doing.
Of course. So my name is Kembia Munsanje. I'm a graduate of California University of Pennsylvania. I graduated in 2015 and found my journey into finance by way of the derivatives trading desk at Goldman Sachs, derivatives trading desk at Capital One, and currently where I work on the mortgage-backed securities trading desk for Fannie Mae, which is a government-sponsored entity. The way that I found myself in this career and a little bit about myself is I have a grandfather who was always asking me to find my niche. And particularly to finding my niche, I think when I came across investment banking, it was the calling that I was looking for because you had complexity within financial literacy and understandings of high finance. But you also had what made sense to me in terms of how the financial system works, because the first trading desk that I went to work on was a trading desk called the Credit Derivatives Desk. And so anybody who is familiar with the 2008 financial crisis would know that catastrophe is actually linked to credit default swaps. And so the trading desk that I went to work on, I would later understand that, these were the baskets of prime mortgages that these investment banks would put together, but they're coming out to commercial banks that hold your loans as anybody who's receiving a loan from a bank to buy their house. Now, when that happens, the commercial bank is saying, hey, we don't want to hold the risk for all of these billions of dollars of loans that we're giving out to the American people, to the Zambian people, to anybody who is taking a home loan. And so they come to an investment bank and they say, hey, we want to buy insurance for these loans. Now, there is a calculation that goes into play of what the default percentage rate is and when that will be triggered, creating a credit event. And so I got to see that firsthand working on the debt default of the Puerto Rican government, working on some very big deals, that kind of gave me a full insight to how financial literacy works and how our financial markets are moved just from the fact that people need coverages of insurance, whether that is in line with your personal health insurance, life insurance, or it is to the complexities of financial markets that create meltdowns because banks have given out bad loans. And so to sum that up, essentially, when Bank of America would come to Goldman Sachs to cover $1 billion worth of loans, they're actually paying premiums to Goldman Sachs for $100 million a month. But as soon as Goldman Sachs takes in those loans, they're actually going to sell out a swap, and that's selling that position or that trade to another counterparty. So in the 2008 financial crisis, the last person holding this hot potato was AIG or some of the sorts of Lehman Brothers, a lot of the entities that you saw go down.
That is so I had a list of questions, but I think I'm gonna veer off a little bit. I'm curious as to how, so of course, you graduated and then you went into the financial world, right after we were recovering from the Great Recession. And, I still feel like, and now we're close. It's hard to believe that in 4 years, it'll be 20 years since the Great Recession, which is just crazy to think about. I was born in 2004. So I was 4 years old when it happened. But, I have an interest in history and recent history and stuff like that. So, I vaguely remember what happened in 2008, but I sort of remember the aftermath. And, one can argue that reason why we're in a lot of societal turmoil is because of what happened in 2008. So my question is, after the financial crisis, when many people sort of had a bad taste in their mouth about, banks and corporations and finance, you sort of answered it, but why did a college student want to go into that environment after what happened in 2008? Or a young person?
Yeah, of course. I think you should always have excitement about life. And, my grandfathers, my grandmothers, the people in my life, they always persisted. They were persistent that, education was going to be the way to take you towards where you wanted to go. And so that direction led my goals, where I had an understanding from a very young age, if I loaned $1 to my sister, she knows that I'm looking for $2.50 back when I'm calling in that loan. And to the structure of understanding, how a deal is actually done in the written context of the language, and then the actual execution of those trades or facilities that make markets move, or a bank handing you the money for your loan, you using that to pay for your house, and then now there being a drawdown on an equity line and a monthly payment being given. So I think what happened for me was the first week, and for anybody who's young, who's listening, I challenge you to, when you go to high school, when you go to college and you're in middle school, you can read books. My dad, he used to drop us off at the library, and he would be studying for certifications, for different things in the areas or fields that he has his degrees in. And my sister and I would be picking up different books, but the books that I was picking up were about financial entrepreneurship. And at 11 years old, I'm figuring out that I can ask my neighbor to cut their lawn, and I can say that I'd like to be paid $20 for this. I can buy a snow cone machine from Walmart, and I can use my neighborhood pool to sell ices to my local community. I can, be a paper boy. I can have my own paper route. I can do landscaping. I can get a job. And that's what fully took me into the world of finance. And that's why financial literacy is so important to me, because, by the time I'm 12 years old, I might have a good sum of money in my pocket, but that is because I saw that education, educating myself firstly, and then now putting that into practice by saying, hey, I'm going to save my money, I'm going to invest my money, and I want to see what the horizon of time does with compound interest to these funds I'm willing to put away.
First of all, I just want to say I also am an advocate for libraries and for reading. So that anecdote you gave, and you at 11 reading finance books, sort of reminds me of myself. I was at the library, in fact, yesterday, because I've been on spring break for a week, so I got some books at the library. But that story sort of reminds me of my own sort of little anecdote, and I'll share. I remember when I was in the fourth grade, we had specials in elementary school. And I think on Thursdays we would go to, the media center, and you'd have a learning lesson on digital literacy. And then maybe the last 15 minutes were dedicated toward, getting books. And mind you, I'm in fourth grade. I don't know. I'm like, I don't know, 10, 9 or whatever. So, most of my cohort is, you're reading mystery books. I'm reading, biographies on, Dr. King and Barack Obama, and I'm reading history books. So that story about how you're at the library, most kids are, reading, mystery books. You're picking up, books on finance. So like, that's pretty dope. That's pretty cool. So it sort of tells you sort of where you were headed at a young age. You also mentioned in your introductory that you worked at Goldman Sachs, you worked at Bank of America, these big institutions, and you've been able to work with them and interface with them in your work. How did working at these big institutions, Goldman Sachs, for example, headquartered in New York, very well-known financial institution, again, sort of affiliated now when there's a lot of tax the rich, and there's a lot of populist energy around banking. Again, at a young age, you're working in these institutions and you're still young, but how did that inform you again to sort of work in the world of finance, especially again, as I said before, you came of age during a time where there's a lot of anti-finance sentiment because of what you said, the recession. So again, how did working in those big financial institutions sort of inform your understanding of finance and sort of lead you to believe that, all right, finance can actually be a good thing in the community?
Thank you for the question. And I think that's a really good question because it's almost the same reason why you can avail yourself of an opportunity if you don't actually try. And I think I can speak personally to that because my sister is a social worker. My other sister is a NICU nurse. My father is a pharmaceutical scientist. My mother is a nurse. And so, when I'm on the floor of the trading desk at Goldman Sachs, I asked one of my MDs, I gave them that synopsis to inform them that this was my family structure, but I don't know who we're helping here, because I could directly correlate that, my father is a pharmaceutical scientist, he's creating drugs, helping people. A sister who's a social worker is helping people. A nurse who is my sister is helping people. A mother who is a nurse is helping people. But I was seeing that, does my job only have a proprietary gain where my expertise is used to help make more money for the firm? I think, what changed my direction because, I did have some reservation to say, is this the path that I want to continue? And what changed for me not having reservation is actually sitting right in the middle and being at the center of that world where the decisions that I make, they do have effect. But I think from a long-term approach is for me to realize like, hey, my voice is heard in these meetings. I'm in rooms that I have always wanted to be in. These are rooms that I expected to see myself in. And I'm working with the smartest people on Wall Street. And so that changes, my whole trajectory because when you think of somebody like HH who comes into power and then you see Zambia's debt default rate get slashed in half. There's a financial complexity behind that and the assurance of the European unions, which go and certify the election, which was highly contentious. But as being one of those people who would say to the president directly, financial literacy matters whether it is in Zambia, whether that it is in Poland, whether it is in America, whether it's within the Eritreas or some of the Middle Eastern states, because the connection of our global world means that we are all at the center of one place now, where our contributions based on this financial literacy and understanding applies to the next generation's ability to have low inflation, to have costs that do not continue to rise without rising wages. And so when you think of that from the standpoint of myself, formerly being a political scientist,
Mm.
formerly being an economist, and now thinking in a trajectory of a political economist, you have to apply yourself to be able to put yourself in a perspective of every single person's shoes, and not just where your centered interests are, and saying that, hey, I have a God-given skill set that allows me to sit in this seat. And so I would be taking away my ability to help people and move our countries forward if I wasn't going to be putting myself in the center of these conversations, understanding these foreign currency rates, and looking at it from a perspective to say that, one of my aunties who I always talk about, and I'm saying, hey, we need to invest in Zambia. When I'm calling the Philadelphia Association of Zambians and calling on the youth within the diaspora of, the DMV here, saying, hey, we need to invest in Zambia, it is because I understand that when the inflation rate is 25 to 1 US dollar, it means that I need to flood
Yep.
these dollars into
Yep.
a Zambian bank account.
Yep.
And when that rate goes down, but I have already sent the money, now I'm coming to Zambia to invest. And just like the powers that be within the governmental structure of Zambia is going to want to bring inflation down, that means that you have to feel that at the gas pump. You have to feel that at the time when you're buying your groceries. So I've always been somebody who's wanted to stand up to a challenge, and I think that this was no different, because getting to Goldman Sachs, it took me 4 years. It took some it took some trial and error. And the last anecdote that I can leave you with is in my interview, an interviewer for maybe a freshman, what they call analyst program or summer internship. They asked me, Kembia, if you were the CEO of Coca-Cola, what would keep you awake at 3 a.m.? Now, at this time, I'm in my first year of college, and I'm being taught only by political science professors. I have
Mm-hmm.
not taken any economic course. I have not, walked into the business school and had conversations with those students. So I answered as a political scientist. I said that, China is going to become the next hegemonic leader of the free world. And when they adopted our free market economic system, they were able to bring 640 million people out of poverty. So, if I was the CEO of Coca-Cola, the thing that would keep me awake is what I need to do to bring the remaining people into this free market economy. And, because I'm somebody who follows up and wants to know how I can do better, I would later find out that that was the wrong answer. The answer was
Yeah.
about EBITDA. So anybody who doesn't know what EBITDA is, you can go and look that up later, but you'll understand.
First of all, from one political science, I'm an undergraduate studying political science, to a political scientist, a political economist, excuse me. First of all, I think it's great. Although I don't know. I mean, I like the major though. It's not too difficult. I haven't taken an economics course yet, so I'm sure I'll have to before I graduate. But my next question is, you're talking about financial literacy, the importance of financial literacy among young people. For example, in Montgomery County Public Schools here in Maryland, in my senior year, we had to. I think it's mandatory now. You have to take quantitative literacy, which is basically, in that class we were learning, financial life skills, college loans, and things like that, how to basically manage our money, because in a lot of minority communities, I would say in the Black community, unfortunately, there's not been an emphasis on financial literacy. Most folks, unfortunately, instead of, savings. Instead, you once you get a lot of money, the first thing you do is, you buy a car, or you're not once you buy the car, as once it leaves the lot, it depreciates. So instead of saving up, you're spending. So talk about sort of how you tried to integrate financial literacy, and you already talked about it, but sort of expand upon it more. How you've tried to integrate financial literacy in your professional career, and how you and sort of why it's important for young people to be financially literate, especially in today's society.
Of course. And this is the most important part of the session to me, because this is the thing that's going to change your life. It's going to be the thing that's going to change your family's life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to be this idea of, if you have earnings, and it doesn't matter whether you are making, $10 a year, you have to be able to bucket this money into different tranches so you create discipline and responsibility for yourself. Because if in 5 years you want to have $10, you know that you're going to need to save at least $2 a year of that $10 that you might be making. But in the
Yeah.
sense of me using numbers that are just very easy to understand, I'm asking for people to say, hey, I will take consistency in order to save money, to invest money, in order to put my future first. Because what's going on right now, you might think that you won't have an emergency, that for something that's unexpected to happen. But when it happens, a lot of the statistics will say that people don't have $1,000 if something was going to happen to them tomorrow. And so, for me, the place that comes from is to say, you have to be using this idea of delayed gratification.
Yeah.
But if I told you that my delay for getting to Goldman Sachs was 4 years, the gratification was when I got there. It was 4 years of hard work within a college structure that helped me develop into a person who would be able to sit at a trading desk. And day one, now I could push the button with full understanding of, in a steep learning curve of what I'm doing. So you don't have to have fear when money is being deposited into your bank account for
Mm.
anything. All the random money that you get, miscellaneous funds account, that should be the name. Your vacation that you want to take, that should be a vacation savings account. And it even ties into the idea of life insurance, because that's one of the perspectives to me of whether that is here, whether that is in Zambia. A big deal for me is trust,
Mm-hmm.
revocable trust, irrevocable trust, because a lot of us may not know it, but the elections that we're making for the companies that we're working for, we may be selecting the least amount of money for our life insurance. And that means that this is one times the basic annual salary for which the company will give you, you don't have to pay for. But a lot of these companies will give you 9 times your entire salary if, in the event that something happens to you, the people who are left behind need to be financially taken care of. Now, when you ask how much of my paycheck that costs me to get 9 times additional of my salary, it may be a very minimal amount, but you'll be surprised at the people who do not make this election. And so when something actually happens, they find that they don't have the insurance to cover some of the expenses that creep up. And so where you coincide with that at the same time as a young person for delayed gratification, I work in an incentive-based industry, and I've worked for 10 years. But if I told you that I've only ever taken one bonus that's been paid to me, because
Wow.
every other bonus that they paid to me, I said send it straight to my 401k. If my life
Wow.
went on, or the year went on, and many of us work jobs where we don't have incentive based pay, we do not get performance bonuses, we do not get different types of bonuses, but when we do get that discretionary income, now what have we gone to do with it? We buy the new car, we use it for some of the the things that are not going to actually spare us when we're really wanting to have that money. And so this delayed gratification means that when you have a bank account within the United States, within any country with a formal banking structure, you will have access to a financial advisor, and that financial advisor is who you want to sit down and ask all of these questions. So when I was 12 years old, I remember I went to the bank and there was a financial advisor there who said, "Hey, you're making deposits into your accounts every week. What are you doing to be depositing checks and you're 12 years old?" I told him that, the neighborhood I was living in, I used to do a paper route, and when I turned a certain age, they wanted me to now do some summer landscaping. I had gotten a check that I had not known I would see. But I knew that at 12 years old, this was not good money for me to be spending out there with my friends. So I
Yeah.
wanted to delay, how I would be able to later enjoy that money. That delayed gratification allowed me to use that money some 5 years later at 17 to help pay
Wow.
my first semester of college. And I was very, very proud for that. I was very proud for that. When I started working, it became a systematic perspective where I say to my friends, "Hey, um, the yearly salary that we are receiving, I'm going to save half of this. I'm going to save half of this salary, and I'm going to learn to live on one paycheck." My friend said, "Kembia, it
You're
can't be done."
crazy.
I said, watch me. And at the same time, for anybody that knows me, who knows I love to travel, they call me the chairman of life. They'll say that when I was living in Salt Lake City, Utah, working for Goldman Sachs, my friend said that, "Kembia, you treat us like a flyover state because you're never here." So while saving half of that salary, while putting 18% of my income into my 401k, I still developed a system where I said, "You know what? If in paying my rent, if in taking care of my expenses, I can find enough money that if I don't travel from January till about April, my first flight can come in May." And the first flight I took, I went to see an auntie in Chicago, then an
Mm.
auntie in Houston, then I explored to California. And so building that practice of discipline allowed me to give myself the life that I wanted, but it also created financial protections around me that say, "Hey, I have nieces and nephews. I need to understand what, financial literacy is there out there for me to save for them." I found that for anybody under the age of 26, there is something called the Universal Transfers to Minor account, formerly known as a UTMA. And it allows you to save for a child from the day that they are first born. So for
Wow.
me to give you an example, if you were to save about $40 to $120 for a child every month of their life, by the time that child turns 16, you would have about $37,000 sitting in that account. And when that
Wow.
child turns 26, there would be about $175,000 sitting in that account. But now, what do we do with this perspective? We have to educate that child, and we have to put protections in place that say, "Hey, when that child graduates from college, if they choose to go to college, and they are working their first job, we are not going to allow them to lose income by going to pay rent. We have financial literacy. We are going to use financial trust in order to buy them a house where they are living. And now, when we buy that home where they're living, we actually empower them to say, yes, if you want roommates, let them come. If you want to live alone, let that be what it is that you want to do." So in the sense of removing, the financial burden of a rent, you actually now empower that person to say, "Hey, because the trust from your 26 years of saving helped you buy your first house, and now you as an individual, not your parents, not your church, not other family members helping to support you, you can use what I call a trickle up economics theory, because now
Mm.
the money that you're getting, that first paycheck that might go to the rent, you send it all to the financial stock markets, whether that is the Lusaka exchange, which is known as Loose, or that is the Nasdaq, that is the S&P 500. Because what you're going to see is that if it is $100 you're saving, after 1 year, you're going to have $1,200 in that account. But based on the rate of return, which might be 10%, which might be 20%, you're going to find that you end the year with maybe $1,440, is it? And that's much better than the 1,200 you started with. So when you compound that over 10 years, even if you were still to keep 1,000 or $100 a month in that account, you would then be looking at somewhere between 24 and maybe 28,000, doubling your money.
Wow, you just dropped a lot of gems. Trickle up economics. I've never heard of that. I've heard of trickle down economics. So that I just wrote that down. That is actually very interesting. You dropped a lot of gems. Um, so sort of practical advice for someone who is, in college. I'm in college. I like to, you know, travel. I don't travel as much, but I would like to spend at least the rest of, my 20s sort of, traveling and exploring the world. How can a college student, or how did you during your years, how can a college student um, build the principles of financial literacy while maintaining, financial security? Because you talked about how, you delayed your, your travel, and how you built discipline without losing financial security. So how can young people, how can college students um, build fiscal discipline while maintaining fiscal security?
Yes, I mean, I think that those are the principles of our parents, of our grandparents, of our families, the education structure in the countries that we live. Because, my late grandfather, Mr. Myron C. Mukonka, Mr. Edward B. Munsanje, my grandmother, Margaret Mukonka, and my grandmother, Maina Mukonka. These are people who set courses for their children to go and educate themselves so that I would be able to live a better life. What it means in setting up that financial security is, I'm trying to explain to you that I have lived on the East Coast from 9 years old when we moved here because of opportunity, in which my dad got a job with Johnson and Johnson.
Mm.
And I believe it was maybe 2025 in July that he later retired from that company. But
Wow.
in me living on the East Coast for all the years of my life until I went to college from 9 to 17, it was actually my educational journey and my own personal pursuits of my interest in finance that Morgan Stanley was the firm who flew me to New York City, and I was invited to an event where they wanted the top 50 recruits within the United States. And so at this event, there was 43 students from the Ivy League, six from private universities, and I was the only student from a state university. But
Mm.
that financial security was saying that, hey, there are people who want to help you achieve your dreams, and you have to be the one to get around to knowing that there are opportunities out there, whether that's going to be the diversity lottery program, whether that's going to be an early insights program for Morgan Stanley, a diversity symposium at Goldman Sachs, a launching leaders effort or symposium at JP Morgan. Whatever field you're in, whether that is medical, and you're looking for opportunities at GSK, Eli Lilly, Pfizer,
Mm.
every single one of these companies, they want to recruit you. I had the tough time of trying to figure out, do I want to be a consultant because I'm being recruited by McKinsey, Bates White, some of these different consulting companies, or is my true passion within investment banking? And so that pursuit of education from people who are pushing you, and telling you that this is possible not just for me, but it's possible for you. That has to become your financial security because, I didn't chase money. I found that money chased me because I
Mm.
put myself in a room to study for 3 hours every single day after class. And I'm a person who likes to have fun. Who doesn't like to have fun? So on Saturday, after
My
I
life.
finished writing my papers, I, had done my studying. When somebody called and said, Kembia, we're here. Can you come? I said, all right, let me close this book. Let me take a shower and I will be there.
Chairman of life.
Dabola.
Chairman of life. I like that. I like that. So again, investment banking and sort of finance world again. I'm actually pretty inspired by this conversation. I'm curious, sort of during your youth, because I like what you said. Sort of money was chasing you. I think a lot of times people who go into finance, are chasing money. I think we're all chasing money, but money should be chasing us. You go into all these spaces at a young age, and you said that you're from a state school. And a lot of these spaces are dominated by Ivy League schools, private institutions. Maybe you went to Wharton, or you study at School of Finance, and some of these other schools, Harvard Business and stuff like that. How did you, as a college student who goes to a state school, how did you not how did you because a lot of these spaces can be intimidating, I think, especially if you don't come from that background. Unfortunately, I think now we know that really it doesn't matter where you go to school. It's about, as you said, sort of that you chasing the windows of opportunity, and people will gravitate toward you if you are earnest in your pursuit. How did you manage to maintain your own personal security in spaces like that? As a young man, again, you're in these spaces. A lot of these students are Ivy League students. Here you are from the state school. How did you manage to maintain your own personal security?
Of course. A lot of times people have a quiet inner confidence, but I think again it comes from the structures that I had around me, because I grew up with parents who told me every single day of my life that there was nothing that I couldn't do. And
Mm.
so that assurance led me into the world that, when I shook somebody's hand and I looked them in the eye and I pulled that hand back, I was very serious, because I had conviction in my heart about what I set out to do. And I wanted to do what I said I would do, not for you to see me do it, but because I knew that I would, I knew that I could, and I knew that there were people who were counting on me. Some of those younger cousins who, are following behind some of the younger generation of students who would follow behind, and they find out that, hey, even though we are a non-target school, when I used to make an application to some of these investment banks, I had to type in my school as other.
Yep.
But when I became the first person employed from my university to go and work for that company, now you can go and scroll and find California University as a selection of for yourself to be a candidate identifying yourself from that school.
My
I
God.
think the piece of knowing that you have to have the expectation within yourself that you deserve to be in these rooms, so that when you get there, your quiet confidence shows up in a person that doesn't have to be subjected to somebody who went to an Ivy League, or somebody who had a full tuition scholarship to a private university. Because what you realize is that at the end of the day, there is this culture of the smartest guys in the room, and this is something that you can find. I have said before in interviews, but I think that truly we're one and the same,
Yeah.
and that's what I find, that places like Goldman Sachs, a lot of people cast themselves out of opportunities to applying for a job there. But they're actually not looking for the students that you think they're looking for. They want somebody who's going to come in from a non-target school, think about a problem with a different perspective, And then that is where, they gain the further and the future success that leads their company into the future, because everybody thinking the same doesn't help anybody. It actually creates what you would think of as status quo, and reinvents the wheel, rather than using some of these legacy systems to say, hey, I want to refine this process because I have new ideas about how we can integrate AI. We can look at some of the complexities that already exist, and simplify our processes.
Wow, I like what you said. I think it's that old maxim that it takes a village, and you talked about how you were dependent on other people, and I think that's really important. All right, we have some comments watching from Dallas, Texas. Um, and we are going to take a quick break while we look for our guest. All right. Let's take a commercial. Let's see, this is what happened.
Another year has passed. You're a Zambian living abroad and you still haven't made progress on your property investment goals. Does that sound familiar? The truth is, most people don't fail because they lack ambition. A lot of people fail because they just don't have a clear system to follow. And when you live abroad, the whole process of buying property can seem even more confusing. Lucky for you, we have just the thing to turn your property dreams into action. Join us for an exclusive session where we'll break down proven strategies to help you set, sustain, and achieve property goals in 2026. You'll even get a workbook to help you map out your own personal property investment plan. If securing your financial future through property is important to you, then sign up using the link below and join us for our property goal setting session for 2026. In just one session, you'll walk away with expert strategies to help you set achievable property goals, step-by-step guidance on budgeting and smart investment tips, and a structured workbook to help you prepare your own personal property plan. This is one webinar you can't afford to miss. Sign up now and start 2026 with a solid plan. The webinar is taking place on 28th March at 17 hours Zambian time. So register now using the link below, and we can't wait to see you there.
Great, we're back. Brother Kembi, I want to sort of ask you.
Hey, we're back.
We're back.
I
No
apologize. I am not able to hear you. So just allow me to rejoin, and I think I will be able to.
Sure.
Yes, I apologize about this. Just give me 1 second.
No problem. Well, this is what happens when we enjoy such a great discussion. I think it was very interesting to see how he has managed to build capacity at an early age. And one thing that I think has resonated throughout this discussion is the importance of having people that will pour into your life. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I'm very sorry about that for everybody.
No problem. When the discussion is good, I think it's those tech bros. I think they're mad at us or something. I wanted to ask you about sort of, the global economy and, Zambia's economy. Of course, we've seen now that, Zambia's kwacha, I think it's the best performing currency in the world, I believe. So I believe that's what the financial indicators have said. Someone made the joke that, now that the kwacha is doing great, for us here in the diaspora, sending money now back home is gonna, cost a little bit more. It's gonna cost us a little bit more. But I'm sort of curious on your thoughts on the Zambian economy, specifically now how the economy is improving. It depends on, sort of your vantage point, sort of like the American economy. There's some people that think the American economy is improving, There are some that, sort of think that, we're heading toward recession. But I sort of want to gauge your thoughts on the Zambian economy and how it looks like from financial indicators we are on a, track toward improvement.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the point of
Uh-oh. We lost him again. See, this is what happens when a conversation is very rich. We have the powers that be that don't want us to engage in this conversation. Of course, my question was going to be on the efficacy of the Zambian economy and how it is seemingly improving across the world. Here we have a comment: compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who does not pay it. Hey, brother, can you hear us?
yes. It seems that my sister is reaching out to me, and so the call is stopping a little bit. So
Well,
we'll have to let anybody know who's in touch.
Yeah, come on, sister.
Yeah. No.
Yes, my question was on the efficacy of the Zambian economy. Your thoughts on how it seems to be, improving among, financial metrics.
Yeah, so I think for me that speaks particular to the understanding of foreign exchange, because I worked within a derivative trading desk where we have to hedge the differences of foreign currencies, on a daily basis, so that way we're actually making money for our firm. Now, when you think of that from an in-country perspective, I think that means, um, if you're living in Zambia or you're living in the United States, you want your government to be able to make sure that inflation is within control. And so even as inflation goes down, those economic benefits have to be felt within the grocery stores of the local people who are buying goods. And it means that there cannot be this idea of manipulation from the actual goods and service stores who may have used, the ability to have hiked prices when inflation was high, and then not actually be coming down on those prices when they're not paying, the same high price for those goods and services that they were passing on to you. I think what I have seen within the Zambian government is that, that has been passed along very well, because when I speak to constituents, directly, I am told that yes, food prices have gone down, petrol prices have gone down, and while the economy is still tough to bear, it is bearable enough for people to make a living and get by, not having to spend as much as they once did when rates were as high as 28.
What do you think that is a direct result of the policies of the current administration? And do you think that the president having a financial background be of might be of any reason why the country is improving economically?
Yes, I think that, I would first say that I think that the president is doing a great job, with steering the economy in the right direction, because, the standpoint of where I'm sitting and what I'm seeing, even against those who have gone to Zambia for development, you have those international parties who are interested in different sectors of the Zambian economy. And so that development to bring new money, new investment to Zambia is a direct correlation of this government's policies. But I think one of the things that attributes to that in the president's financial education is the literacy that's being provided, whether it means that if your child is K through 12, they are getting a free education. And so to me, that is where the process starts humbly enough to say, if we're willing to invest into our people, then the trajectory of the country's economic indicators of price goods, ability for more money to come into the country is that you have people who inspire activity through entrepreneurship and create jobs within Zambia. And what Zambia is doing specifically is forcing, if not forcing, if not heavily encouraging, if not implying that
Mm.
local currency has to be used over
Yep.
the trickulation of, the US dollar, then Zambia will no longer have to be backed by the US dollar, and that will make its currency as strong as it is now, and it will allow, inflation to get to a place where all Zambians can see themselves within the days of a KK, and everybody will get one egg a day.
That I like that. Oh, we have a special question from a special person. How did you meet one of America's icons, the late General Colin Powell and Honorable Musa Katwini and the Zambian ambassador? So please share those stories from a very special person. I think wrote that in the comments.
Oh, thank you. I see that the comment is coming from Dr. Elliot Munsanje, and
Very
I catch
familiar.
first. Uh, I'm very lucky to have that man, this gentleman, a fellow Zambian, as my father, because he's a great leader within the community. But to me, I got to call him my dad every day, and
Mm,
I think that's the specialty of that relationship. To some of the things that we were talking about earlier, um, I was a president of a university group called the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, and I had a decision to make between, a school fair where I get students to join in my club, or a day where I was going to be able to have a 15-minute sit down with Colin Powell. Now the
oh,
question
that's the
becomes,
easy answer.
yeah, what would you do? But I saw that my responsibilities were to my university. They were to my club, where I was the leader of that club. And I didn't want people to see me jet off to go and have a sit down with Colin Powell. I said that, you know what? If I can find Colin Powell later and I can speak to him and I can say hello, I'll be more proud of myself from the students that I got to matriculate into our collegiate entrepreneurs program, because it would mean that we were serving the community by
Mm,
allowing more strategic liaison, by allowing more businesses to flourish, because these businesses would be created based on us teaching what financial literacy and entrepreneurship looks like within a university structure. So, to tell you this story of how I met Colin Powell, I think that it becomes, that space of the quiet inner confidence. Our university basketball team at California University of Pennsylvania, they had just won the national championship. And so these girls and we knew each other from campus. Everybody's chasing after Colin Powell, and they say, General Powell, can I get a photo with you? And he stops, he turns around, he says, sees the basketball team, and he says, "Oh, okay, yes, I can take a photo with you, but I have to go and catch a flight." So I'm standing behind them. They hand me their camera, of course, and they say, "Kembia, can you take a picture for us?" I say, "Yeah." "Do you mind taking a picture for me after you're done?" And they say, "Yeah." And that picture is taken. I see Colin Powell right through my eyes, through the lens of that camera. And then he says, "I have to go catch a flight." Boom. He's turned around. Secret Service is walking with him, and he's gone. And I said, I cannot let the moment end like this. So, I followed after Colin Powell. And I remember there was a lady who she had a certain certificate around her neck as being one of the platinum members of this program in which he came to speak. And so she said, General Powell, I was guaranteed a photo with you. And so they turn around and they see that she's a platinum member. They know that she is supposed to have received a photo with Colin Powell. And it is at that moment that I look at one of the Secret Service agents, and I'm a bright-eyed college student, and I'm saying, "Hey, this this is my chance, right?" And the Secret Service agent just shakes his head no. He shakes his head no, and he's telling me, don't try and interject, don't do this. And at that moment, I thought to myself, I didn't come here for that Secret Service agent. I didn't,
that's right.
sit outside my university University to get kids to matriculate because I knew Colin Powell was coming today and I wouldn't be able to see him. I came to meet General Colin Powell, and I wanted to introduce myself to the joint chairman, to the chairman to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And I remember, as soon as that picture was taken, I put my my right hand or my left hand on Colin Powell's shoulder. I put my right hand out to shake his hand, and I said, "General Powell, I need this photo." And then I handed my phone out to somebody who was there standing, who was able to take that photo for me. And that moment is very big for me. It's a moment I feel that is as big as the moment where I'm speaking with Dr. Chivamba Kanyama. I'm speaking with uh, the finance head, Dr. Musok Otwani, and to them, I think even Dr. Kalalia for the Bank of Zambia, I think they don't know what those moments mean for me. But in my projection of wanting a life that means more to serving the people than what I'm getting out of it myself, those are the same things that I've seen in those people. And so, my efforts are to say, I want to meet President HH. I have written a letter to speak to the president about some of the things that are important for Zambian youth who are living in the diaspora, who want opportunities within Zambia, in the country, and what we can do here to help serve the administration and the country further along, whether it is now or later in our lives.
What a fantastic way to conclude our time together. Quiet confidence clearly is what has propelled you, and quiet confidence is what will get you to meet HH. Now, that story about Colin Powell, that's a pretty funny story, because I think if it was me, I think I probably would have, probably would have given up. But I admire that story, because I think it's an indication of the kind of person that you are. Any final thoughts that you would like to share before we conclude our time together?
Of course. I just want to say thank you for having me on the Zambia Blog Talk Radio. I want to say thank you for the opportunity. My father putting me in touch with you, and he being that central link, to the community, serving from abroad and bringing the diaspora full circle, so that the Zambian community here has the touch point of things that are going on the ground. I want to say to you, as a young person, someone that I see in myself, your full future is ahead of you, but you have to keep the will of being a good person, wanting to do the right things, having integrity when nobody is looking, and setting up standards for yourself that also keep boundaries for things that within these financial spaces. You don't want to do the wrong things. You want to make the right choices, because nobody's ever going to scold you for making a mistake, but they are going to, they're going to be some retribution from trying to hide what should be the goodwill of being able to speak up. And so, to tell you the truth, I don't believe that you would have given up, because the full saying is that, what did they say in Tonga? Gamu votela, or you say tiende pamosi, because it's like, hey, if I don't vote, we can't go forward. So I have to be a person of instruction to speak for myself and have my own voice.
Wow. Thank you very much, Brother Kembia Munsanje, for this opportunity for our conversation. I really immensely enjoyed it. And I look forward personally to connecting with you, and I look forward to learning from you. This was a fantastic show, and I hope for all of our viewers that you left with something that you will hold as we continue to progress throughout the year. Next week on ZBTR TV, Pastor Nathan will be back in the chair, and he'll be hosting a show that will be focused on women aspiring for political office. So this is going to be an important one. We hope that you join next Saturday on the 28th of March, 11 a.m. Eastern and 17 hours Zambian time. This will be, again, an informative show. We hope that you will join us again. Women aspiring for political office. ZBTR TV is your place to go if you want to be informed, especially as we head toward this election. Thank you so much, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Zambia Blog Talk Radio.